Great.
Let's jump to this story. We got this from timcast.com. Indiana legislature overrides governor's veto to enact transgender sports regulations. The ACLU has already challenged the bill in court, citing Title IX. Legislators in Indiana enacted a bill requiring students to compete on sports teams that correlate with their biological sex. Minutes later, the ACLU filed a lawsuit arguing the bill is a form of gender-based discrimination that violates Title IX. And I'll just say, I think the ACLU is right. I don't think they're right culturally. I think they're right legally. And that's something I've long talked about. You can't have gender segregation under the 1964 Civil Rights Act, under Title IX. So the arguments that were made for ending racial segregation make sense. The arguments for ending gender segregation don't make sense, but there's a legal precedent that doesn't care about the distinction. So this is what's happening in schools now. So basically this bill is trying to say, like, look, I'm going to put it this way for everybody who's not familiar with what's going on or who maybe doesn't understand. There is a female pro skateboarder, came out as trans, kept competing against females. Then you get male skateboarders who say that they're actually women, and then they compete against females. It only flows in one direction. This is a big part of the problem. This is what these bills are trying to address. If we need to create a new league, a new division for trans athletes, then sure, maybe that's a solution. But just eliminating the women's division makes no sense. Now, the ACLU is arguing you can't have gender segregation. I think the issue is the law says that.
I'm trying to understand exactly what the ACLU is saying, because I mean the ACLU are the people who tweet out the men have periods.
Right, they're basically nuts, right?
Yeah, they're nuts.
But so here's the issue. From a legal standpoint, I think they have a correct argument, legally correct, but not like an actually. What's the right way to say it?
Justifiable?
Right. Justifiably,
Morally,
like
ethical.
Morally or ethical. Yeah, it's a better way to put it. The 1964 Civil Rights Act, you can't discriminate against a person in public accommodation based on national origin, sex, gender, blah, 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 whatever, race. So from that, we were like, okay, no more, white restroom and black restroom. It's all going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
But even though the 1964 Civil Rights Act includes gender, we never ended gender segregation for obvious reasons. Men and women are different. And
okay, so on the precedent side, you are saying that it is correct because of the Civil Rights Act and how it was enacted.
I think people need to understand that that these laws are not that when we try to create a logical formula
right.
for a cultural problem that is nuanced and is experienced in a gradient way, you will have issues like this.
Right. So we're basically saying that we do actually need laws that segregate women from men in terms of these types of things, whether it comes to sports or any of these. Is that a hot take? I don't know. I mean, that feels pretty natural to say.
Yeah.
Well, so we had I think it was Delano Squires who was on. We were talking about this, and he was like, you can travel all over the world and see the differences between men and women are like uniform.
Right.
Differences between different groups of people in different areas, are different as well. So the issue with race is that it's not a good reason to segregate somebody. Like you say this guy's white and this guy's black. Well, one dude is Italian and 5'5", and one guy's, Swedish and 6'5". I mean, race is not the issue right now. So for like MMA, we do weight categories and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
For segregating based on race for a bathroom, that makes no sense. But gender, experienced all over the world by every single human being, 99.8% of the time is the same. There's a reason why we separate. There's a variety of cultural reasons and then actual physical reasons. But the 1964 Civil Rights Act doesn't include any of that. So this would have to be addressed. One of the issues at play is that they have they allow segregation at certain universities for gender segregation. When it's like a woman in computers program. There was a lawsuit. It was something like this. Some guy sued saying you can't have a woman in computers program because that is discriminatory against males. The school said we have a men in computer program. And the courts ruled that so long as they offer the same opportunities to both, it's not actually discriminatory. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wouldn't that precedent apply to national origin, religion, or race as well? Mm-hmm. That was what we got rid of when we ended segregation. So how is it different when it comes to gender under the same law?
Right. I'm a lawyer, right? And what I find interesting about these types of conversations is that it shows very clearly that the law doesn't have an answer for everything. Mm. These types of laws, obviously with, the subject of transgenderism, when these laws were written down, that wasn't an issue. So it poses all of these new new problems that now the law has to respond to, needs to answer to, and it doesn't know how to. And I think with something like this, the way that we've always dealt with that was morality. So you have certain norms in society that dictate, okay, well, obviously, in this case, we find the segregation or the differentiation of certain groups justified because that's just the way it is. There is no better argument really for it, or that's the way it should be, because we have a shared idea of what is right and what is wrong in society, and therefore, that problem kind of solves itself.